Rock on, buddy.
Well, good evening. There comes one in we've been waiting on all day long. Next month, our speaker will be Dr. Brandon Beck.
Right.
One of the better speakers that you'll ever have. I ain't gonna say he's any better than Lee, but we put him in the same boat anyway.
He don't tell good jokes.
He's a good speaker.
Yes, he is. Very good speaker.
Never worth listening.
Yeah. All right. Tonight we had to ship a man in all the way from Ambry, Mississippi, to speak to us. Mr. William Pat Andres, and I hope that's close enough. You could probably been called worse, like me. But anyway, he's gonna do a good program. We've heard a lot about Tom Dooley. There's a little difference in the name and everything, but I'm going to let him explain all that. And he also does a living history program on the Natchez Trace Parkway. And if you want to know something about the Natchez Trace or a little bit of history about it, then I'm sure he is the man to contact. So, but anyway, we're in for a pretty good program, and so we're going to turn the program over to Mr. Pat.
Thank you, Bobby. It's good to be back with y'all. I'm bringing you greetings from Camp 873 in Ambry, Mississippi. If you don't like the program tonight, you can blame Pam Malden, because I did this program for the Order of Confederate Rose last year at their state convention, and I think she mentioned Mike to ask me. So if you don't like it, you Pam. Now I see her waving back there. Now, I'm a banjo player, and Bobby Irvin is a banjo player. And Bobby, I got a question for you. Do you know what the difference is between a banjo and a trampoline? You don't know? Well, people pull the shoes off when they're jumping on a trampoline. Took him a minute to get that. All right. I was playing a banjo one time. We're going to get to the program in just a minute on it. I played a banjo one time, and a woman walked up behind me. She said, "Y'all know how to make a banjo player's eyes light up?" And I said, "No, how?" And she shined a flashlight in my ears. In 1958, the Kingston Trio came out with a song called "Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry." And that song went on to become one of the top songs of the 20th century. But a lot of people don't realize that Tom Dooley was a real person. His name was actually Tom D-U-L-A, Dooley, but where he lived in the western North Carolina mountains, people, the dialect over there, called it Dooley. So this is a story about Tom Dooley, Confederate soldier. We only have one known picture of Tom Dooley, and this is him right here. He's a member of the 42nd North Carolina Infantry. And I'm going to go ahead and got several pictures here. I want to, Marty, if you'll take them, just start them in different parts of the building, and y'all just pass around and look at them, and I'll tell you about the pictures later on. Tom was born in 1845 in Wilkes County, North Carolina, which is in the northern part of North Carolina, up close to the foothills of the Appalachian Mountains. Kind of a poor family. He had two older brothers and a younger sister, and his mother, I think she was a widow, and they kind of had a hard travel life. There were also 3 foster girls Laura Foster, Pearline Foster, and Ann Foster that lived in the same neighborhood. And they all grew up together, spent a lot of time playing in the woods together. Pretty early on, Ann Foster developed a romantic relationship with Tom Dooley. And they spent a lot of time together in the woods and growing up and doing things, you know, what they'd be doing. Tom also developed the ability to play the fiddle. He became a pretty good fiddle player, and he was in pretty good demand for the barn dances in that part of Wilkes County. Was kind of a ladies' man. Laura Foster lived about 3 miles down the road, and her mother was deceased. She lived with her father, and they had a bunch of other kids, and she was the oldest kid, and she had to take care of the younger siblings, and she kind of had a hard life too. Ann Foster lived just kind of right down the road from Tom, and she lived with her mother, and her mother had several other children, all by different fathers. She was the oldest, and she had to take care of the other younger children too, and she didn't like that. So they all kind of poor folks, you know, had a lot of trouble. But anyway, Ann and Tom, they hit it off and they fell in love. Well, right before the war started, I don't know which war I'm talking about, there was an older man, and he was about 28 years old, I think, at this time, named James Melton. He lived kind of right across the road from Ann, and Ann was about 16 at that time, I think. And Ann's family was so poor, she didn't really have shoes to wear in the summertime, but she was a very beautiful woman, according to the descriptions we have on her beautiful teenager. And James Melton noticed that she didn't have shoes on. Now James, compared to the other people in this story, he was fairly well off. He had a little farm, he had some cattle. He was also a cobbler. He made shoes, and he had a little business, so he had some money. And he saw Ann and saw that she's walking barefooted, and she's a real pretty 16-year-old, and he got smitten by her, so he told her, said, let me make you a pair of shoes. So he did. This went on for a little while, and he asked Ann to marry him. Well, Ann is in love with Tom, but she knows Tom doesn't have anything, is not going to amount to much, and she thought, well, I'll just take advantage of this opportunity to marry a man that's got a little bit. So she married James Melton and moved in with him, but the story gets a little interesting here now. They go to bed at night, James goes to sleep, and she get up and sneak out the door and go see Tom. Spend a little time with Tom, and she'd get back home before James woke up the next morning, and she'd be in bed with him. So this went on for a while. And about that time, the war started. James joined the 46th North Carolina Infantry, Army of Northern Virginia, and he went off to war, was in a lot of the battles. He became a color guard, member of the color guard carrying the flag, which is a very dangerous place to be in battles. And actually he got wounded a few times, but he always came back and carried the flag. He got captured near the end of the war and sent to Point Lookout in Maryland as a prisoner. Ann is at home, and her idea is maybe James will get killed, and then I can marry Tom and we'll have his farm and his cows and all that. Well, in 1862, right before he turned 18, Tom volunteered and joined the 42nd North Carolina Infantry. And there's a picture going around of Tom. Who's got the picture of him? This is Tom, right here. He's in his Confederate uniform. He's a member of 42nd North Carolina Infantry. That's him right there. That's the only known picture we have of Tom, really. Tom, being a musician, his war records indicate he wasn't a musician. He played the fiddle, which would probably be at night around the campfire, but what he did in the battle, he was a drummer. And you know, during that war, they didn't have walkie-talkies and means of communication back and forth like we do today. And the way the men were signaled to make their movements was by drum. The drum sound would be loud enough it would carry above the sounds of the battle. And he could beat a certain cadence for forward or retreat or oblique to the left or go to the right. He could beat a cadence. So that was Tom's job during the war. He was a drummer. Now he got wounded a couple of times, had some minor wounds, and he also got sick one time and was in the hospital some, but he made it almost through the war. He was captured at, I think, the Battle of the Siege of Petersburg. That's the siege, the last one there, wasn't it? The Siege of Petersburg, and he got sent to that camp in Maryland too, Point Lookout. So he was there with James. So both of them made it through the war, and they had to walk home from Maryland, walked all the way to North Carolina. Well, when they got there, Ann was real disappointed that James didn't get killed. So we started this all over again. They'd go to bed, and Ann would sleep out at night and go see Tom, and then get back before James got up in the morning. Now, about this time, the other foster girl enters the picture, Pearline. When the war started, Pearline had his family, they moved further back up in the mountains. And something happened to them, we don't really know, but about the time right after the war, Pearline shows up at James Melton's house and says, I'm homeless, I don't have any family, can y'all take me in? And Ann, being her cousin, talked to James and says, can we give her a job? And Ann really wanted him to, because Ann was real lazy. She didn't like doing housework and farm work and all that. And she was hoping that he'd hire Pearline where she'd do the work, and then Ann could lay around and sleep and go see Tom at night. And so James says, well, you can sleep told Pearline, you can sleep in the barn, and you can do the chores, milk the cows and feed the chickens and all this stuff, and I pay you 10 cents a month. So that's where Pearline is. We're going to leave her right now. Well, things in the neighborhood, a little gossip started going around about Tom and Ann. And Ann got a little bit afraid, you know, people realized that she's slipping out with Tom, you know, and that might hurt her marriage with James, and she didn't want to give up the good things she had with James. So she told Tom one night, she says, you know, some of the neighbors were talking a little bit. I want you to go down the road about 3 miles to Laura Foster's house, and you just kind of start a little fling with her so people will think you go on with Laura, and they'll forget about, you know, maybe me and you being together. So Tom, being the outstanding young man he was, he said, all right. So he walks down and he goes to see Laura. Well, you know, Laura's very impressionable, and she's there with just her daddy and having to take care of all the young kids, and she's about 20. She's wanting a man, and men are real scarce during that part of the time because a lot of them got killed in the war. There wasn't a lot of men to go around. So she thought Tom was really interested in her. And it did begin to get a little serious. And Ann got jealous. When she began to hear about what's going on between Tom and Laura, she got a little jealous. So she told Pearline one day, she said, Pearline, I want you to go down to Laura's house and you find out what's going on. And Perlene says, well, that's about almost 5 miles away, and the time I walk down there and play, I won't have time to do the chores and milk the cows and feed the chickens. And Ann says, I'll take care of it for you today. You go down there and find out what's going on. Are y'all seeing this right now? Get kind of getting involved in it. All right, we're going to get to the main story in a minute. So Perlene goes down there and she starts talking to Laura and finds out what's been going on, and she comes back and tells Ann, says that Laura and Tom are going to elope in the morning and go get married. The next morning, a neighbor sees Laura riding up the road on a horse, and she's got a little bag of her clothes with her. And the neighbor says, where are you going, Laura? She said, me and Tom gonna run off and get married. Well, that's the last time anybody's seen or saw Laura Foster alive. A day or so later, Laura's daddy comes around asking in the community, has anybody seen Laura? Said, she left on my horse yesterday morning, and I don't care where Laura's gone, but I need my horse back. And in those days, you know, a horse was a pretty valuable animal, I guess you say. But it'd be like our car today. If somebody took our car off, you know, we didn't have a way to get around, but they had to plow with it and roll with it, you know. So a horse was very important. He didn't care about Laura, but he wanted his horse back. Well, nobody had seen Laura, and he asked all around. Well, about 4 days later, the horse came back to his house, and the rope that was on the halter had been chewed in two. So they knew that the horse had been tied somewhere, and he chewed the rope in two so he could get away and came back home. Well, the people began to get suspicious. Something has happened to Laura. And they got some search parties out, and they searched all over the countryside, and they couldn't find her, but they did find a piece of rope where the horse was tied. And so they looked all in that area, thought they looked for Laura, and people began to get suspicious, you know, did Tom, you know, one of the neighbors said she was running off with Tom. They began to wonder that Tom, you know, if maybe it's Tom done something to Laura. The talk got pretty serious there, and Tom, he got kind of worried. So he came to Ann Melton's, met up with Ann one night, and he said, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go across the mountain over into Tennessee, and I'm going to stay a while until all this blows over. And I'm going to find a place over there and maybe get established, and I'm going to come back and get you and take you over to Tennessee, and me and you'll be together. Well, little time went by, and people, since Tom had disappeared, people really got suspicious. The sheriff kind of got involved and got to asking around, you know, Tom's left the country, you know, maybe he's guilty, maybe he did something to Laura. And they began to have more search parties, searching, maybe see if they could find Laura's body. They really couldn't pin anything on Tom right now because he didn't have a body. Well, the word got out they were looking for her body. And one day Ann comes to Perlene and says, Perlene, you going with me? We're going to go check where we buried Laura and make sure the grave's still hidden so nobody can find it. And it surprised Perlene that, what are you talking about? You know where her grave is? She says, yes. And Ann said, if you tell anybody, I'm going to kill you too. So they went up on the mountain, and Perlene went with them, and Ann found a spot where they buried her and then covered it over with leaves and trash and sticks and stuff. And she was satisfied nobody had found it. So they went back home. About 3 days later, Ann told Pearline, said, we need some supplies from the trading post, or whatever they called it in those days, which was about 3-4 miles down the road. You take your basket and you go down there, and they gave her a little money, said, go buy some supplies. Well, on the way, Pearline is walking along, and she comes by these 2 old boys sitting beside the road drinking whiskey out of a jug. And they said, hey, Pearline, come on over here and have a drink with us. Well, Pearline's not one to turn down a drink. Y'all see what this is doing? Pearline goes over there with us and she gets drunk. And she staggers on down to the trading post, and when she's walking up on the front porch of the trading post, happened to be 2 sheriff's deputies there. And they talking about Tom, where is Tom? You know, what's happened? And Pearline says, or they talking about, can't nobody find Laura's grave. We don't know what happened to her. Pearline said, I know where she is. I know where her grave is. Pearline's drunk now. So they immediately grab Pearline and take her to jail and lock her up. The next morning she wakes up and she's kind of over-drunk a little bit. And the sheriff comes in and talked to her. She said, oh, I was drunk. I didn't mean it. I don't know. And they said, yeah, you did, Pearline, and we're going to accuse you of being accomplice to murder if you don't tell us what you know. It scares Pearline. She says, okay, I'll take you and show you where she's buried. So they put Pearline on a mule, and they head out up the country to go up the mountain, and she shows them where the grave is, and sure enough, they dig it up, and there's Laura's body, decomposed a little bit, but it's got a stab mark right in her chest. And so they know it's her, and they dig her up and take her back and put her in her grave. Well, they said, Pearline, how did you know where this is? She said, Ann Melton told me. So they go and arrest Ann, and now they know they got to catch Tom too. Tom must have something to do with it. So they send out 2 deputies to go over into Tennessee looking for Tom. And they come to this Colonel Grayson's place, and he says, well, I hired a young man that fits that description a while back. Yeah, I know where he is. And Colonel Grayson takes him to where Tom's working, and they find Tom, sure enough, and they capture him, put handcuffs on him, take him back to North Carolina, to Wilkesburg, and put him in jail. And also they've got Ann in that same jail. Tom's on the 2nd floor and Ann's on the bottom, I think it is. They don't let them be together. And they're waiting for a trial. Trying to think where I am now. We got Tom captured, all right. They had the trial and had Tom's trial first. They find him guilty, and Ann is waiting for her trial, but while Ann is waiting for her trial, Tom writes a letter saying that Ann Melton did not have anything to do with Laura Foster's death. It was my doings. So basically they release Ann. Tom gets a change of venue, and they move into Statesville and have another trial, but he's still found guilty. On the day of his execution, they bring him out in a wagon, and they stand him up on the back of the wagon, put the rope around his neck, and while he's waiting, he says, you see these 2 hands? These 2 hands had nothing to do with the death of Laura Foster. After he'd already said that Ann didn't have anything to do with it. So they pulled the wagon away, but they didn't have the rope long enough that he'd have a drop far enough to break his neck. So he just hung there for about 15 minutes while he slowly choked to death. His younger sister, Elsie, came and got his body, and they buried him on some private land. Now, you should have a picture of Tom Dooley's grave. Y'all, everybody see that? And the reason it's chipped is so many souvenir hunters came by chipping off pieces of his tombstone before it was gone.
I didn't do it.
You should have a picture there of a woman, that is Ann Melton, or was Ann Foster, that's Ann Melton. You should have a picture there of Laurie Foster's grave. One interesting thing about Laurie Foster's grave is in 1960, a movie star by the name of Zsa Zsa Gabor, any of you older folks remember her? Yeah. She heard about the story about Laura, and so she paid to have a tombstone and a fence put around Laurie Foster's grave. Zsa Zsa Gabor did that. Ann Melton, she went back home, and her and James were living together, but about 2 years later, she was riding in a wagon, and the wagon turned over on her and crushed her. Didn't kill her, but it put her on her deathbed, and she was laying on her deathbed dying, and it said that she saw the fire from hell all around her, and confessed. Some say she confessed that she killed Laura, and some said she just saw the devil and his fire eating her up. So she was expressing her guilt. But it looks like from the story from best that we able to tell that Ann stabbed Laura Foster. Tom may have helped her bury him, but he didn't really do the killing. But he took the route so Ann wouldn't hang, because he still loved Ann. So this was a love triangle story. The rest of the story is, you see this banjo over here, that's an 1800 style banjo. It's called a mountain banjo, like they built in North Carolina. And by the way, the banjo is a state instrument of North Carolina. And that's a mountain banjo like they made back in the mountains of North Carolina. And it has no frets on it, and it's got gut strings, and it's like a skin head, and it's made out of wood. That's walnut. Well, the story goes that in the early 1900s, a man named Frank Profit from North Carolina built these type banjos, late 1800s, early 1900s. And his grandmother was just a little girl when Tom Dooley was in the jail at Statesboro waiting to be hung, and she heard Tom singing a song that became Hang Down Your Head, Tom Dooley. She heard him singing that song himself. And later on, 40-something years later, I guess, she taught the song to her grandson, Frank Profit. Frank recorded it on a banjo like this one in 1928, I believe it was. In 1958, the Kingston Trio took Frank Profit's song and recorded it then, and it became a popular song in the late 1900s, late 1950s and early 1960s. So that's the story of Tom Dooley, Confederate soldier. And what I'll do is I'll play it, Tom Dooley on the banjo. Maybe I'll let Bobby play it and I'll sing it. You gonna play it? Let me sing it.
Yeah, I'll sing.
All right. Can you hear it there? All right. Get the banjo. Now, this is not gonna sound like a modern banjo, but this is the way it, this is the way it would have sounded in those days. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed a little Lord at Boston, poor boy, you're bound to die. Well now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you're bound to die. Took her up on the mountain, there I took her life. Took her up on the mountain, stabbed her with my knife. Well now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you're bound to die. Now this time tomorrow morning, reckon where I'll be. If it hadn't been for Grayson, I'd been in Tennessee. Well now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. You killed a little Lord at Boston, poor boy, you're bound to die. But this time tomorrow morning, reckon where I'll be. Down in some lonesome valley, hanging from a white oak tree. Well now, boy, hang down your head, Tom Dooley, hang down your head and cry. Hang down your head, Tom Dooley, poor boy, you're bound to die. And that's the story of Tom Dooley, Confederate soldier, hanged for the death of Laurie Foster, of which he was probably innocent. And I forgot to say this, but I think about the year 2000 it was, there was a petition that went around in Wilkes County to exonerate Tom Dooley from the death of Laurie Foster, and the petition was signed. So that ends the story, I think. Any questions about Tom Dooley?
Thank you very much. Ain't that awesome? That banjo sounds good too.
It sounds better when Bobby plays.
Bobby, can you play it?
Yeah, let Bobby play.
Come up here playing something on it, Bobby.
Sounds better when he plays.
You do a fine job.
Well, we really thank him.
Be shy, Bobby. I'm sorry, folks, but I forgot my spoons or I'd play something for you. Man, it's been an awesome night, hasn't it? All the talent we have. Isn't that awesome? Thank you so much.